President Donald Trump announcing his new tariffs will go into effect Tuesday. It's 25% taxes on imports from Canada and Mexico, while China gets an additional 10% tariff. Peter Navarro from the White House, he's a senior counselor on trade and manufacturing, tells the Hill Sunday's Chris Steyerwalt earlier that this plan will work.
The bottom line here, and the president will tell you this every time, America is cheated by every other major trading partner in the rest of the world. We have lower tariffs, lower trade barriers, and they treat us like a piggy bank. We've got a $1 trillion trade deficit, and that trade deficit is reflective of all the factories and jobs that go offshore and all the wages that get depressed. Americans understand this. They didn't understand it when we first got in 2017. They understand that tariffs work.
And all three countries responding late last night, saying they do plan to enforce their own retaliatory tariffs or countermeasures. Joining us now to talk more is our political panel, GOP strategist Rob Bluey and Democratic strategist Dan Kaninen. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Rob, I'm going to start with you. The tariff's not well received by our North American allies. Mexico and Canada actually have already unveiled these retaliatory tariffs of their own. But Republican Congressman Byron Donalds told the Hill Sunday that the benefits do outweigh the risks. Listen.
The risks are worth it, and the reason is because with respect to China and Mexico in particular, there is a massive amount of fentanyl coming into the United States and killing our people. And in order to get this under control quickly, you need the Chinese government and the Mexican government to step in and do the business on their side of the border to help to protect our people.
So he's really just breaking down what these tariffs are intended to do. They're intended to stop the flow of fentanyl into this country. Trump says that Mexico and Canada and China need to do more to make sure that American safety is not put at risk even more. So, Rob, are these tariffs, though, worth the risk of harming our relationships with our top trading partners?
I think the tariffs are worth the risks because we are talking about American lives. I mean, you look at what fentanyl has already done in terms of devastating communities all across this country with drug overdose deaths and the families that have lost loved ones. Yes, I do think that Donald Trump needs to ratchet up the pressure on all three of these countries. Canada alone, there was fentanyl that traveled across the border that could have killed 10 million Americans. And so I understand that Justin Trudeau and others are upset about the situation. They could have come to the table with solutions. Instead, they didn't do so, and Donald Trump followed through on his promise.
Well, but one of his other campaign promises, Rob, was that he was going to bring down prices. And Dan, you know, all along the campaign trail, Trump kept saying, when you get a high restaurant bill, when you get a high grocery bill, think of Kamala Harris, think of Joe Biden, don't think of me. But is this going to actually cause our bills to go up?
Yes, and the way Byron Donalds described it as a risk to our trading partners or a risk on the economy, it's not a risk, it is a certainty. This will shrink the economy by 0.5 percentage point. It's going to increase taxes by $1.2 trillion. The Conservative Tax Foundation, not Democrats, not liberals, Conservative Tax Foundation estimates $830 per average household in 2025 alone. And let's not forget, when he tried to eliminate the trade deficit in his first term, he blew it up from $400 billion to that $1 trillion figure that Peter Navarro raised. It didn't work in his first term. It's not going to work this time. What it will do is increase prices to consumers, exactly the opposite of what he said he would deliver.
All right, Dan, I'm going to give this one to you again. Rob, I'll get back to you in a second. Dan, a second judge has temporarily blocked the president's federal aid funding freeze after the White House rescinded the move that would have caused a widespread freeze on most federal grants and loans. Earlier, we spoke to the former Wisconsin governor, Scott Walker, on this. Here are his thoughts. Listen.
It's why this Department of Government Efficiency that Elon Musk is leading is so incredibly important, and get a handle on it. We don't want to see, hammers that cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars when you can buy them or for pennies on the dollar, Menards or Home Depot. That's what this is about, is getting accountability, efficiency, and effectiveness back to the American people when it comes to our government.
So he's talking about all the bloating. Dan, we saw a lot of backlash over this move, but is there some need for some accountability?
When I worked for Barack Obama in the first administration in his first term, there was a huge emphasis on reducing paperwork, reducing inefficiency in government, combining agencies where that made sense, streamlining the way we process things so that it works better for the American people. That's a conversation Democrats, Republicans can always and should always have, and there should be no sacred cows in that space. But What the Trump administration is doing with this really ill-considered hammer is not following the law, not following procedures. It's not going to result in actually a better government. It's going to result in chaos. That means things like block grants for Medicaid and Medicare don't get to states and don't get the people that need it the most at a time when they're already struggling. They need to step back and actually work with people who know what the government does and how it could be functioning, and work on efficiency in a way that's actually intended to be productive. This is not that. This is a political vendetta.
I want our viewers to take a look at this headline from the New York Times, because according to reports, Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, has gained access to the federal payment system in the Treasury Department, which includes sensitive data like Social Security numbers, Medicare customer payments, things like that. Rob, is it necessary for him and his team to have this type of information?
Well, certainly if Elon Musk is going to carry out the promises that Donald Trump made to voters, yes, he needs to access to this critical information about how the government is distributing money. And I will agree with Dan on this. The government is inefficient and the status quo is not acceptable. I think both on this issue of cutting spending and the earlier issue of tariffs, let's face it, things are not working. The American people voted for change, and that is what Donald Trump is attempting to deliver. And so whether or not it's Elon Musk or some other representative of his administration, they absolutely need to be in control and make sure that the government is aligned with their priorities.
All right, Rob Bluey, Dan Kaninen, thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate it.